Good afternoon. Sean here from Mountains Garage. It's the end of a rainy workday. I've been collecting some more 9-inch parts, and I recently re-watched my 9-inch Ford assembly video, and I kind of breezed through a couple things, and now I have more parts laid out on the bench. I just wanted to go over them one more time. When I was drag racing, pretty much all my 9-inch parts were 35 or 40 spline, big pinion, pro gear stuff. Now that I've transitioned into slower, 850 or slower, it's not really slow, but drag car that I'm going to build, street car / or hot rods and stuff, just 31 spline NASCAR stuff that's either been cycled out after one race, or it's brand new and they've come up with something different. I mean, there's lots of reasons for it, but everything you see here came right out of North Carolina. From some very famous shops like that coated case. That's some kind of coating. It says DEI on the box. Gee, I don't know what that means, but I'm just kidding. Anyway, 31 spline. I think it's certainly suitable for what I want to do, and if I have trouble, then I guess I'll go to bigger stuff. But that's my thoughts on that. Before I mounted up the ring gear on this Detroit locker, I took my trusty stone. It's pretty well beat up, but I polished the surface of the ring gear where it's going to touch the locker, and the locker where it's going to touch the ring gear. I was wanting to make sure it's perfectly flat. It highlights any area of question. This one didn't need much, but makes you feel better knowing that they're as true as I possibly can get them. And this whole rear end, I'm scrounging, through all my boxes. I don't want to open brand new kits and stuff if I have enough parts to do it otherwise. So I found these pretty cool looking ring gear bolts. They're the right depth. I put Loctite on the threads, and I put lube under each of the heads. Because if you do it dry, the torque reading's not going to be correct. There's no book or guide that's going to tell you that other than common sense. But that goes for most things you're going to torque. Is it wet or dry? Sometimes it tells you. A lot of times it doesn't. So you got to figure that out on your own. Use your own best guess. So I set the ring gear on the bench. I set the locker over it. I held it up. I started a couple bolts, started all the bolts, and just used a ratchet just to pull the ring gear on. It went pretty easy. It didn't fall on, so I didn't want to just start gunning on the bolts, but no big deal. Just pull it on nice and straight. And torque it up and you're done. I press the bearings on. As you can see, they sit slightly below the locker. So this is just an old piece of pipe. It's not tubing. It's actually like pipe, black iron pipe. Just machine the end, and it fits right in the groove. And I push on that, and that way it doesn't hurt my bearing. These are actually used bearings, but they're just like new. Again, from my box of bearings and parts. I'm building this for myself, just another spare. It's 360 gear. I now pretty much have every ratio in the threes, all set up on different Detroit lockers because I keep coming across some pretty good deals. Onto the pinion. Now to the main reason why I wanted to shoot this video. I didn't go over the difference between a crush collar and a spacer and shims when you set up the pinion. I kind of just showed it all assembled and briefly explained it, but now with it still apart, I can explain it. That's a crush collar. It goes between the inner and outer pinion bearings, and the yoke pushes on it. Obviously, you have the pinion support installed because that's where your bearing races are. So you squish the whole thing together, and the more you turn the nut, the more you squish this, and you squish it to the point where your rotational drag is what you want. Everything's fine, but when they designed this thing in the 50s, they never envisioned the amount of power we're going to be making and how much we're going to be impacting the drive line. And you continue to beat on that, it just keeps squishing. Your bearing preload is gone, your bearings are loose, and then eventually you drive over all your parts. So, you throw that away. Low performance, junk it. Solid spacer. It goes in between. It takes up most of the space. And then you experiment. It takes me 3 or 4 times sometimes to assemble the whole rig together to get the right amount of rotational drag. These come in different sizes. These little kits, These aren't even opened yet. About 15 bucks on eBay. And I got an old pinion nut. It's all wore out, a couple thick washes. I just keep assembling it till I get the rotational drag where I want it. Don't be surprised. I mean, you have to tap the outer bearing over the stem anyway to get it back off. A lot of times you got to use a puller to get the yoke back off. Assemble it without the seal, because you're going to do it 2 or 3 times, and when you're done, you can assemble it for real. But that's the goal, to have a solid spacer with the right amount of rotational drag. And you'll find, let's just say you wore this thing out and we're just going to replace the bearings. I've had really good luck just using the spacer and the shim that went with the support. And bearings are made very precision, and I can put it right back together, and usually my rotational drag will be correct no matter how many times I replace the bearings, which is kind of handy. Much better than the crush collar, because they're a pain to set up. And we're back. On the 3rd try, I got it right. Disassembled it one more time. Packed my seal with petroleum jelly around the spring on the back side and tapped it into the pinion support. Coated the splines ever so lightly with some clear sealer on inside the yoke, and assembled it with a new pinion nut. That's done. It's funny, I never intended to assemble any of this today. I was just seeing if I had enough parts in my boxes. Turns out I did. In my other video, I mentioned I like the aftermarket housings that have a snap ring groove cut. So after you tap in the tail bearing, which supports the back of the pinion, which makes a 9-inch Ford strong, having 3 bearings. It's like a big truck. The snap ring would retain that instead of this Ford-looking washer, the retainer. Strange N1941. But it'll work. It's what I have. This case has this heat coating, which I know nothing about. It does have the hole for the cooler. Some tracks, NASCAR runs an internal pump that runs off the back of the pinion. There's a hex that drives the little pump. And the line comes out through here to run to the cooler. My other videos, I have one video on all the differences I could think of with 9-inch Fords. One is an assembly video, and this is just an addition to that to talk about a few more things. I hope it's short. I haven't looked at all the minutes, but sometimes I get a little windy. Long in the tooth, as they say. So that's it, boys and girls. Enjoy your rear end. That sounded bad. Good night. Like and subscribe. Thanks.